Welcome to the Passive Income Podcast. I am your host, Dividend Dave. Please be sure to join the Passive Income Posse by clicking that subscribe button below. And on today's episode, Millennial Mojo. You can find him on Twitter at Millennial Mojo. Is there an underscore between Millennial and Mojo on your
There is
Twitter
not.
handle?
There is not.
Okay, so just at Millennial Mojo on Twitter. And I'm going to let you give yourself a introduction.
Hi everyone. My name's actually Steve. We're gonna go as far as that. We're not gonna go much further than that, just for reasons. But yeah, I'm Steve. I'm almost 30. I do a little bit of investing. I do a lot of learning, a lot of reading. I do own a little bit of real estate as well, and quite a good portfolio, I would say, for someone my age. But the best part about being young and investing is you get to learn a whole bunch from everyone who's gone through it before you. So that's why it's nice to come on a podcast like this, Dave, where you've been able to bring a large amount of people on here that have shared all of their tips and tricks. And one of my favorite things is getting to listen to your podcast and get a little bit from everyone that tells you, hey, maybe this is something I can incorporate into my portfolio or my strategy. And it gives you new ideas to think about. So, Dave, first off, I got to thank you for A, having me on, and B, allowing us to come on here and have great guests and listen to the conversations they have and maybe pick out a little something that can help us down the way.
Yeah, awesome. So definitely thank you. Well, again, thank you for being on. Thank you for being on again, but your first time. I'm going to explain that to the people who are listening.
Yeah.
Steve and I did record a full 20 minutes between Christmas and New Year, and the conversation was going great. And then all of a sudden, our internet connection just went away. And so basically, it's pretty much been a full month later now where we've been able to reconnect, and at first we were just gonna try to edit that first 20 minutes together, and I said, "No, you know what? A month later, things have changed. Obviously, the market moves every day, so let's just take it from the top and see where this conversation goes." So please, everyone, pray for a good internet connection for us for the next 45 to 60 minutes so we can get this conversation of the Passive Income Podcast, going and in the books and uploaded onto the internet so everyone can enjoy the conversation.
We're not asking for a whole lot, just like a little bit of internet stability for the next little bit would be great.
Right? Yeah, that's great. And again, so to your second point, thank you again so much for just the kind of almost that like reassurance of all these great guests I've had on, and so many people that have been, like you said, giving different tips, ideas, strategies, and what can you incorporate out of their ideas into your own portfolio and your own strategy. Again, none of this is financial advice. We're just all people sharing ideas, and anybody that helps anybody else, that's exactly what I want this podcast to do, right? That's exactly it. 110%. I'm just hoping I'm helping people help other people.
You definitely are, and like I said, you're bringing together a good collection of people. Like you have some fairly strong dividend growers, such as Dividend John. Then you have someone with real estate like Lauren from Adult and is Easy. So you do bring together quite a good collection of people. I would say it's nice that you get a little bit of variety each episode. It's not like we have the same type of people that come every time. We do have that variety, and as someone on the younger side, I guess I'll say is myself compared to yourself, Dave. It's nice to have someone
He
who
just
comes
called
with a
me
little bit.
old.
I did not mean to call you old. Like, I mean, I'm getting there too, but it's nice to have people come and explain their strategies and kind of understand what they've gone through, like I said. So
Yeah, exactly.
it's been nice and enjoyable, I will say.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate, like you said, yeah, Dividend John, great guest. Lauren, also great guest, but two pretty much totally polar opposite, uh, you know, investing strategies, right?
Yes.
John, very much into the Canadian banks, and we'll get into that, I'm sure. And obviously, Lauren, very much into real estate. And then there's just been that, spectrum of all the other guests too, like just from one end of the spectrum to the other of, some people that just have, a small portfolio and really focusing on some
Yep.
like John, who only had like I think 10 in his portfolio, and then others Then others that I've had recently they're like, I have everything, and you're
Yeah.
like, wow, is there anything you don't own? Because it does sound like you do own everything.
Yeah, there definitely is some benefit to owning everything. So I do technically own a little bit of everything, but my core positions for the most part are built off of two main index funds. So I do own a fair amount in VDY, which is our Canadian dividend growing or dividend paying monthly. So that one is one of my core positions, and then my other core position is VFV, which is the S&P 500 index from Vanguard. So to me, I get a little bit of both. So I have I have a little bit of the Canadian stuff that grows every month, and then I have my S&P 500, which is kind of my super long term plan. Like we're just gonna put a little bit in here each month, and we're gonna go with it from that. But besides those two core holdings, I do have a little bit of individual holdings within that as well. Just because there's certain companies that I own that for me just make sense, and it's how I started investing at the start. So
Right.
it started with when I started to take a look at companies, I thought, okay, what are some bills that I pay on a daily basis or a monthly basis? And it kind of went, oh, I'm gonna steal your line here, which I think you've mentioned you
Turn the
stole from other
cash
one.
register around.
Turn it around, exactly. So my bank was TD, and I took TD. My phone bill was with Bell, so I owned some Bell. I have a mortgage with RBC, so like I have some RBC. So it's one of those things of like, okay. And then after a while, as you start to stack a couple of these, and you talk to some of your other friends, and you find out, okay, like who are you guys also paying? And like most people have gas bills, and most people have Enbridge, and most people have Hydro One if you're in Ontario, or you have
Yep.
Algonquin if you're out east or down in Florida. So like, and or Emera if you're also out east. But there's all these different companies that you can have that are going to have payments coming on a regular basis. So when you sit there and you think about it for a second, you go, if everyone else is paying the bills to them and they're willing to kick you back a little bit, wouldn't it just make sense to own a share of the company or a small portion that, hey, you know what? If everyone's going to funnel some money in, they're going to have to pay their bills to live their life, like your daily utilities. Maybe it makes sense to, like you said, turn the cash register around. Like, let's collect a little something from it as well, and let's be a part of this.
I want them to pay me to pay them.
Yes. Yeah, and it makes it
couple in
real nice and easy. Sorry, go ahead.
couple interesting points there. So obviously you turn the cash register around. I was gonna mention Hydro One, but you brought it up. So yeah, for 95% plus of us living in Ontario, we depend on Hydro One. So it makes sense to own Hydro One for anyone in Ontario, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
Not financial advice. I'm just saying. For me, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I've started a small position in it. I'm going to dollar cost average into that literally until they pay me to pay them. Like
Yep.
that's the goal. And
And like you
I'm
said,
same with you. I pay my cell phone bill to Bell, dollar cost averaging into Bell shares. And I've also said in the past that almost jokingly, I'm going to buy enough Bell that they pay me to buy TELUS. And you know what? I might do that at some point in the future. Just, oh, Bell's paid me $30 in dividends. I'm going to pick up a share of TELUS just almost for fun,
yep.
almost just to say I did it. But in reality, I want them to pay me to pay them, right?
Yeah,
And turn that
exactly.
cash register around.
Exactly. Like you see, even if you talk to people, the amount of people that are sending their bills to these companies, it just starts to make too much sense almost. They're like, hey,
Right.
maybe there is a little something here that makes sense as to why this company keeps pumping out record revenue every year. Now, you look at some telecoms and they do have a little bit of their own things going on with their 5G infrastructure and their upgrades, everything like that. Then you look at companies like Enbridge, who have very, very long-term contracts. Like to move anything in their pipelines, everything runs through them. So it's kind of like, okay, if they are the main monopoly on the market, I'll say, not exactly the main monopoly, but they're
Yeah.
the main player. So everything runs through them. It's like, okay, you talk to most people, everyone's main banks is one of the six big banks that we have. Depending on
Right.
how far you want to go down, there's more, but we'll keep it to the main six for now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just one of those things like, okay, like Canada's a very unique market where we do have a couple sectors that have monopolies or oligopolies. So it's kind
Yes.
of like, okay, we can choose to build portfolios off of these massive core holdings that have been institutions for years. Like some of these companies, most of the banks have been paying dividends since the 1800s. Like it's when you have consistency like that, you can look at that as an investor and go, okay, I think I would feel a little bit easier about owning this company if they have a track record of a very, very long time of paying dividends, sustaining growth,
Do you
growing in
follow at
acquisition.
Settling Nomads on Twitter?
I do. He is one of
So
my also favorite accounts.
again, a huge shout out to at Settling Nomads. I've mentioned his one tweet from last October so many times on the Passive Income podcast, where yeah, the Canadian banks. Uh, I want to say is it Bank of Nova Scotia 1829. So in 6 years, they're coming up on a 200-year anniversary.
I believe it's
Sorry, I
them
didn't
or
know
it's
you were going to
BMO.
bring this up, or I would have had the tweet ready to share.
That's okay.
But yeah, yeah, all six of or the big five, coming up on 200-year anniversaries and all over 150 years of paying dividends. Obviously, not a dividend increase every single one of those 150 to 200 years,
Mhm.
but that's still some long-term stability and obviously longevity. And I've other guests I've had on the podcast where we're like, okay, dividend kings, dividend aristocrats, what do you call this? And somebody, I can't remember who came up with the term dividend centurion, and I was like, oh,
Yeah,
that's
that would
great.
make sense.
Yeah, it was like
Uh,
dividend centurion. Maybe you didn't raise it for 100 years straight, but you've been giving dividends for over 100, 150, 200 years. I think dividend centurion. We need to the div twit community needs to start just hashtagging the hell out of that one.
Dividend Centurion. Yeah, that's a good one. I will. I have not heard that one, and I do like that. And I might actually end up stealing that. I'm gonna give you the heads up. I might steal that from whoever said
Yeah,
that.
don't give me credit. I'm gonna have to go back and research and try to figure out who said that to me first because they definitely deserve the credit for it.
That's a good one. It's a good one.
Nice. So also in that opening, you mentioned Algonquin Power, and we know what happened there with their dividend cut. I guess about 2 weeks ago now,
Yeah,
and
give her
so
give or take.
I've put out a few tweets asking, okay, we know what happened with the dividend cut, and is now the time? The price is low on Algonquin Power compared to say 3 or 4 months ago. It is now the time to be greedy while others are fearful. What are your thoughts on Algonquin Power right now?
So, first off, my thoughts are just my own thoughts. I'm not telling anyone to do anything. So,
Yeah, exactly.
my own personal thoughts is I had put something out on Twitter as well, and I caught some flack for it. And the way I caught flack for it was not the way I expected. So, I had mentioned that like, hey, look, everyone in their neighbors knew that there was going to be a cut of some sort. Like with such a high level of debt, and they're just basically using shares to make acquisitions and just basically bleeding it out that way. It was like, okay, like
Yeah, the
management was
writing
like,
was
okay,
on the wall that a dividend cut was
exactly.
coming.
So like, all right, we're gonna reel this in. They still want to go through the Kentucky Power buy, which I mean, if that works, it works. If not, then we'll reevaluate from there. But my position is, okay, to me, it's still a utility company. People still need utilities to do everything, like to run your lights, to run any appliance in your house. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
there is something to that, and they do have this commitment to ESG, or sorry, to renewable energy. Pardon me. So it's like, okay, so they do have some projects that they are working on. Now, the way they had structured all the debt and to get the acquisitions and stuff, maybe not the greatest, but
Right.
to me, it's such a small portion of my portfolio, about 1%. It's one of those things like, okay, I'm perfectly content to take the cut because it's like to me it's 1% of my portfolio.
Yeah.
I'll take the cut and just hold and see what's going to happen. Like I might add a little bit here and there as I go, but right now I'm kind of like, okay, let's see what management's going to do. Like it's not going to turn over overnight. We're not going to send this thing back to where it was at 18, 19, 20, $22. Like
Right.
let's just kind of build this a little bit and let's see what happens. Let's see what management's plan is. Like they had the investor day I think on the 12th of January, something like that, and immediately all the bad news came out and everyone was
Yeah.
like, oh, like we're dumping our shares and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, like if your thesis for why you bought it has changed, then absolutely cut your losses and go with it. But my thesis for why I bought it still remains the same now as it did back then. Now, is there a little bit of air quotes on it because management has changed the way they're doing their structuring? Yes. Will I keep an eye on it? Of course. But to me, my original thesis has stayed the same. yes,
Right.
it's going to be a little bit rough, but I think things get worse before they get better in pretty much every scenario. I'm hopeful things get better, but I'm not actively pounding my fist on the table and say I'm going to go buy another couple hundred shares or something like that. It's not what's happening right now, but I am keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in a very similar situation as what you just described. My position isn't huge in it either, and I'm obviously watching it, and I'm going, well, over the next whatever 3, 6, 12 months or longer time period, do I keep adding a few more shares and just kind of see where we go? Because I'm honestly going, you know what, Algonquin Power is still going to be a company in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the road. So it's kind of like, what is that long term? And that's obviously what dividend investing is that long term growth, long term strategy, and you know, can they recover from this? And in 10 years' time, in 2033, are we going to be looking back at January of 2023 as just like a blip on their chart, right?
Mhm. It's quite possible for sure. The other way you could look at it is okay, if things don't go the way they do, theoretically,
Yeah,
well, if the company gets acquired by someone else, then you would then own shares in that new company, hopefully.
right.
And then you would have a whole new management structure that would kind of take a look at this and go, okay, how can we turn this around or something? So I'm same boat as you. Like I don't think utility companies will disappear like that because there's so much infrastructure that goes into building up the company and having everything
Exactly.
run. That's one of those things of okay, if it does get acquired in the future, I have no idea for the record.
Yeah,
If it
none of it,
does,
nobody can predict the future, right?
absolutely not. And I mean, if I did, I wouldn't come on this podcast. I would hide my almanac with me and I would do everything like that. But if it does get acquired, management of the new company will have an idea of what they want to do with it. If they want to go in a different direction, they'll go in a different direction. If they want to sell some assets, they'll sell off assets. And it's just that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Moving on to another favorite topic of mine, and I think it's one of yours as well, REITs.
Yes.
I love my RioCan, and I've got a whole bunch of other REITs as well. Let's dive into REITs. What do you think?
Uh, REITs for me are again, they're also a very, very small position just because I have a smart shopping center across the street from my place.
Yep.
And the shopping center I normally shop at is a RioCan as well, ironic. So it's one of those things of like, okay, because I go there so often, I might as well, own a little portion of this. Like I own a little parking spot there. Not really, but it's
Yeah,
one of those
yeah,
things of
yeah.
like, okay, you see everyone that goes to them. And most of these REITs, well, Smart and RioCan I can speak for. I don't know a whole lot about the other ones, but those ones are anchored by large tenants. You have your Walmarts, your Independents, your Loblaws, your Metro. So they're all have their own little niches of okay, these are our core tenants that are gonna get everyone to come here. Like everyone's got to buy groceries. So if you have those and you support it with good businesses around, I think you're gonna see that the REITs are gonna be okay moving forward. Now,
Yeah, yeah.
everything got absolutely decimated. And I don't think anyone really thought what was going to happen or really thought what happened was going to happen in March of 2020. And then the world kind of happened. And everyone kind of took a step back and went, oh, wow. Like, are we not going to use brick and mortar stores anymore? And you know what? For some things, maybe Amazon did help a lot of people out during the pandemic. But it's one of those things of
Right.
you still have to go get your groceries or order your groceries from somewhere. So those have to get stored in a grocery store. And most of those grocery stores have different chains and restaurants and everything. So there is a little bit of okay, I do own a small portion of REITs, but it's not the majority of my holdings. I
Okay.
prefer actual residential real estate for my for my real estate, but I do own one rental and that's great, but it's not the end goal for me and I will end I will end up adding some more REITs in the future, but right now it's not the main focus of my portfolio. But I do like to have a little bit of exposure because everyone ends up going through one of these shopping malls at some point.
Yeah, and the monthly dividend is nice, obviously.
It
Two
is.
part two part follow up. I know both of us are relatively close to Kingston, Kingston, Ontario. For those listening, maybe in America that don't know where Kingston, Ontario is, it's at the eastern end of Lake Ontario, obviously on the north side, the Canadian side. And are you so the first part of this follow-up is, are you familiar with the RioCan Center in Kingston? And are you old and the second part is, are you old enough to remember, Nortel? And
Uh,
this is there's a connection there, and I'll tell you why once you answer.
okay, I don't think I've traveled through Kingston. I haven't been to it a lot recently, so I can't say I do know the Ryokan Center. However, I am very, very aware of Nortel.
Oh wow, really? You're old enough to remember Nortel?
Yes, yes. I work in IT security, and we have had lots of chats about Nortel and
Oh,
what's
right.
happened there. And I think everyone's heard the stories of people who had their entire company pensions inside Nortel, and they basically
Yeah.
disappeared overnight. So yes, I do know a little bit about them. I won't say much more than that because
No,
I
no,
don't think.
like obviously stories like that are very sad stories.
Yeah.
But the reason I brought that up and why it connects is because in Kingston there was this huge Nortel property, and literally it was like a Nortel plant, and then just like pretty much hundreds of acres of fields around the plant that they owned the land, right?
Oh,
And so when Nortel went belly up, to for a lack of a better term, Ryokan came in, developed that entire property, and now, like you said, huge anchor store. So the anchor store there is like there's a Home Depot, a Michaels, there's Cineplex, Odeon, there's restaurants and banks. And so I was just actually in Kingston about 2, maybe 3 weeks ago and drove past it, and I'm like, "Oh, wow, there's a Scotiabank, there's a TD, there's a
yeah.
Firehouse Subs, there's this and that," and I'm like, "Oh, I have Bank of Nova Scotia. I have TD and Bank of Nova Scotia in an ETF. Oh, I have Fire Roasted Subs in through SRV. Oh, I have this and this, and plus obviously I own Ryokan itself as well." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Wow, this property is making me money. I
It,
like this. This is
it
good."
it's kind of funny. The way you mentioned it is actually a little bit of the way I think about it too. And I have seen other people have mentioned this, and some friends that I talked to mention it as well. Like when you drive by these giant
Yeah,
REITs and you see all your companies, I say your companies, but like you see the companies that you own a
yeah.
stake in, you see them in these giant shopping plazas, and you see the amount of people that go through, and you can sit there and you go, oh, yeah,
I
it's kind of
own
nice to own a portion of this.
a little tiny, tiny,
Uh,
tiny portion of that.
uh,
There was
I own
actually
a
also a Bell retail store there as well, so I'm like, "Oh, okay, good."
Perfect. Yeah, I own a little bit of the mortar on the side of this building, but
Yeah,
that's about
yeah,
it.
right?
But uh, that part is nice. I will say yes.
Awesome. So, yeah, cool. REITs and energy, we've kinda covered. Actually, first, huge, we're well over our 20-minute mark, so we're doing a lot better than
Hey,
last time. Thanks to everybody who's still with us. This is great.
let's
This is a
go.
great conversation. You did also mention Canadian banks, and I'd mentioned it there, briefly in my Ryokan, uh, whatever you wanna call that. And, so obviously Canadian banks, we love them as investors. We kinda hate them as consumers. They charge us fees for everything,
Yep.
but as investors, we know, "Hey, these banks are making us money." So you wanna dive a little deeper into Canadian banks?
I can dive a little bit deeper. I think I've tackled pretty much I wanted off of it. Like to me, again, the reason I started in the Canadian banks was not because of their dividend history at the time. It was all my friends started buying places, and it became the conversation of like, oh, like what mortgage rate you get,
Right.
and it became okay. Well, if your mortgage is with Scotia and yours is with TD and mine's with RY, and like everyone starts listing all the different ones, you go, oh, okay. Like there is something about this that everyone's going to one of these big banks and they're sending a fair amount of their paychecks for that. And it's one of those things like, oh, okay, like let's take a look into this deeper. And then you start looking into some of the acquisitions. Like I know that Nova Scotia is fairly big in Latin America, or it
Right.
has tried to be for the last as long as I've invested in it. And then
Yeah.
TD's done a couple acquisitions in the States, and RY is trying to buy the HSBC in Canada and stuff. So you see these
Yeah. That one's
massive
gonna be huge, I think, right?
I
The
think so too.
HSBC
Yeah.
acquisition?
Yeah, it'll be a big one. Then you have the the Dividend Guy blog. Mikey Rue talks about
Yeah.
all the time his national bank, and it's one of those things of like at first I didn't own any national bank. Now I'm not saying that he convinced me to buy some national bank. However, I will say he did convince me to do a little bit more research on national bank, and it got to one of those ones that go, oh, okay, I can see why there's a little bit of credence to maybe why this would be a good little core holding in my portfolio.
Nice. Yeah, no, Mike's been on a past episode of the Passive Income Podcast, great guest, and yeah, he's
Yes.
definitely, He's definitely high on on National Bank, and like you said, I can see why.
Yeah.
Over the last 10 years, you look at a lot of their earnings reports and balance sheets and all the financials, and it's like, wow, these guys
Yep.
stack right up there with the rest of them, and like not just stack up with the rest of them. Like over the last 10, 15 years, they're on the top of the stack compared
Yep.
to, like you said, the big five, right? Your Royal, your your Nova Scotia and Montreal and the others, right? So
Yep. Management's making some good moves there. They are making
definitely,
some good
definitely.
moves. But yeah.
So huge shout out to you, Mike, at the Dividend Guy. Love you, love your Twitter tweets. Obviously always entertaining, and yeah, he's got a great podcast as well, and
Yeah.
so yeah,
And
definitely.
between that and his 10 minutes Money Moose or Moose Maple Moose, I can't remember the exact title of it. I have it on fairly regularly, and it's bad that I can't remember the name of it. But I switch it back and forth between so many podcasts that sometimes they all get jumbled together, the names. But I
Right,
enjoy his little 10 minutes that he does in the mornings, and
nice,
I really enjoy small things like that. Just because it's not too much, but it's good enough
cool,
in
cool.
length.
Another sector, sort of food, consumer staples, consumer discretionary. And I don't know if you're into US stocks. I did hear you mention Metro. And for those listening that aren't familiar with Metro, Metro is a grocery store chain in Ontario and Quebec, and they're very massive. And they've been, I think their dividend has been growing nicely over the last few years. I know their stock price it's been on my watch list probably for about a year now, and the stock
Hmm.
price has kind of skyrocketed over the last year.
Hmm.
And obviously, within that consumer staples and discretionary, you also have to talk about your Costco's, Walmart's, Coca-Cola's, Pepsi's. Again, like I said, I don't know if you're into US stocks, but anything in that sector you want to dive into.
I don't own any of them individually. I do own them through indexes, but
Yeah,
there is there is some there's just something so nice about having those consumer discretions like the Coca-Cola. I mean, everyone's heard the Warren Buffett story about how he makes billions of dollars off the dividends from that, or from
yeah,
Apple,
yeah.
Johnson& Johnson. So there are those things of, okay, these companies produce products that everyone is using. And it's not, some companies have just one product, but then you look at Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola has Coke and Sprite and water and all these different.
And Diet Coke.
Exactly.
I drink a Diet Coke pretty much every single day.
Yeah. They have all these different products, and it goes, okay, like they have such a brand name and marketing, and just that when you have Coca-Cola, you're getting good quality the entire
Right.
time. So I don't own any discretionary. Uh, I can't remember the exact word you used there. Discretionary spending, discretionary.
Consumer discretionary.
Thank you.
Well, consumer staples, which is more like the grocery stores where you have to buy it, right?
Yeah.
Like I have to buy groceries this week. And consumer discretionary is probably a little more like the Coke and Pepsi's is like, well, I can go to the grocery store, but I don't have to buy Coke and Pepsi.
Hmm.
But I
Yeah.
probably will because it's Coke and Pepsi,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't, like I said, I don't own any of those individually. I just own them through the index, and I'm happy to keep collecting them through the index.
What index fund is that?
That one, so I do own it through FVF, and I do own a little bit through SCHD, which is the American dividend growing one that everyone has apparently been on. I owned a little bit of it starting last July, and I've just slightly increased my position, and now it seems that everyone is talking about it recently. Now, I don't know if the algorithm just keeps pumping me this stuff, which is possible. But I
Possibly,
mean,
yeah.
it's one of those things of like, oh, like everyone seems to be on this now, and it's nice to collect those dividends every once in a while, like monthly. Like you collect that and you go, okay, like I'm
Yeah.
perfectly content to keep collecting this all the time and just go with it the way it is, and I'll buy a couple more shares when I can add it up. But I'm perfectly fine to just hold the index and go with it and say, okay.
Yeah, and I've said this in the past too, like 5% is 5%, whether it's paid monthly or quarterly. But I
Yep.
do like to see it show up in my account monthly. And part of that also is, well, that also gives me more, I guess, leverage to use that, whether it's $50, $10, $100, whatever, every month I can use that now to buy more passive income, right?
Yep. See, it's funny you had mentioned that you like to see it every month. So I have a buddy of mine, and he was very new to investing a couple of years ago, and he had never done anything like that. He owned a bunch of real estate, but never had a portfolio, a stock market portfolio or anything. So he came over to help me paint my unit one day, and we were painting. And I was like, "So what do you do with the rest of your cash that you don't put in real estate?" He's like, "Oh, like right now I'm just buying CDs with it." And I was like, "You're buying what with it?" And so we went on a whole discussion. I explained to him what ETFs were and what index fund ETFs were. And so I introduced him to the time at VDY, which is the Canadian version of SCHD. So it
Yeah.
pays monthly. And I showed him that, and he was immediately hooked on it because
Yeah.
it paid monthly. And I was like, okay, like if you go and look at the structure of what VDY owns, a good chunk of it is with the financials, which for some people is too heavy in the financials, which is fine. There's
Yeah.
other high dividend Canadian ETFs in there, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I believe XAW is another one. But it's one of those things of like he was hooked immediately because he saw that, okay, every time I collect some of my rent check, I'm going to buy some of VDY because I know VDY is going to pay me every single month. I don't have to clock in for anything. I don't have to do any toilets. Like it's
Yeah.
going to show up. Now it does fluctuate a little bit, but he was immediately hooked. So he started out with a small position. I think now he's over maybe 1,500 shares in it. And it's just been this
Nice.
slowly gradual just build. And it's one of his two holdings. The other holdings VFV, and it's just like he's happy now because he's making more and actually seeing progress in that versus just buying a CD or a bond. And
Yeah.
it's just like,
Right.
okay, so sometimes you just need to open people's eyes and just having regular conversations with people. Like you can't be so blunt to be like, oh, like what are you investing in? So sometimes you just need to like slowly, gradually,
Yeah.
dip your toe in with people and just talk about it. And you can kind of go and go, okay, you can see how people spend their money and you can talk about that. So kind of also on that topic on the weekend I was talking with some friends and they're like, "Oh, like we just had our last car payment went through of
Yeah.
$700." And I was like, "Oh, like
That's
that's
great. You don't have to pay a
that's
car
great." Yeah.
payment now for like 5, 10, 15 years. I
Exactly.
saw
Like,
your tweet about this, and obviously we were talking about this before we started recording.
yeah. Like
You
you're
get
done
your
with it.
car paid off. Don't buy another car for like
Yeah.
20 years,
And
right?
they had turned around, they're like, "Oh yeah, like now we're looking to get a new car because now we can afford it." And in my head, I'm like, well, what's wrong with your car you have now? Like you've barely driven anywhere in the last couple of years. Like they both work from home. It's one of those things of like, oh, like
This
why are
makes
we
no
doing
sense to
this?
me.
No, it doesn't. Like why are you have finished doing a payment and you're like, well, time to go restart this payment and get something new. And I think that's kind of the trap that a lot of people in my generation fall into. Of
Oh,
we have
not
a little
just
bit.
your generation. It's happened for generations,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yeah, but it's just the shiny object of like, oh, like
yeah,
I have the money, I have to go buy this immediately. And it's like, well, no, you don't have to go buy it. Like, figure out if it's for you or if you actually need it. So it was one of those things of I didn't say anything because a it's none of my business. I'm not telling anyone how to spend their money because who am I to say anything? Like
yeah,
I
yeah.
know how I
Spend
spend
your
mine.
money however you want, but
Exactly. But
you at 30, and I'm guessing your friends in that same age group,
uh,
20, 30 years down the road when you're at the 50, 55, 60 years and you've been investing in dividends for 30 years and they've been making car payments for 30
mhm.
years, who's in the better boat, right? Well, you're in a nice
Yeah.
big yacht and they're in a little tiny canoe, maybe a dinghy, right?
I mean, a yacht would be nice, but I would settle for a Corvette, I guess. I would. I don't want to lean hard into the Corvette mental or stereotype of like the old gray white hair guy who has it, but there's a good
Yeah,
chance I fall
Corvettes are
into
nice
that.
cars.
They are. They are. It's. I've wanted one for a very long time, and I remember like my running joke that I had when I was younger is that my dream car was a Toyota Corolla because it was reliable and you didn't need anything more than that. I never ended up buying a Toyota Corolla, but it's one of those things of like, okay, and then you start talking to other people, and it seems like everyone, a lot of people in the div twig community or people who are pursuing financial independence, they swear by
Yeah.
Corollas at all times. It's like, oh, I think I was onto this before I even knew what I was actually going after. So a
Yeah.
Corvette would be my dream car. Dave, do you have a dream car?
Well, yeah, I do. It's a 2002 Ford F-250. It's been in my driveway for 11 years. I bought it when it was 10 years old, and I It's now turned 21 this year, and I plan on driving it for at least another 10, if not 20 more years.
And you have no payments on it.
Oh no, God
Oh,
no!
it's got to be nice.
2012 when I bought it, I had no payments on it.
Yeah, that's got to be real nice.
Yeah. It does. This segment of talking about cars and used cars reminds me of the Bare Naked Ladies song, about the K car, a nice reliable automobile.
Yes. That's the "If I Had $1 Billion" song, wasn't it?
That's right. That
Yeah.
is the name of that song. Yeah.
Oh, it's been a while since I've heard that one.
Yeah, I don't know why that song came to mind, but it made me think of it in some way.
It's a good song. Oops, sorry. It's a good song. It's a good song, I will say. Like, so sorry, go ahead.
I was going to move on to another sector that I know we talked about briefly the last time before our internet connection went away. And again, great. Our connection is still going strong, so I'm really happy about this. But
we're 35-ish minutes in. Let's go.
The technology sector, between obviously the differences between the US and Canada, and how, 20 years ago we had some great technology in Canada with Blackberries, with Corel, and now that's more or less went away. And I don't know, kind of any thoughts on the technology sector? Obviously, in the US, you have your Apples, Microsofts. I even throw Tesla into the technology sector. One of my guests a week or so ago, Barry Milligan, said you can even throw John Deere into technology. Like, look at the interior cab of a brand new tractor. And I was like, good point, right?
Yep.
So
those things can pretty much drive themselves now.
Let's dive into that one.
For technology, so the technology, you have mostly your FANG stock. So you have your Facebook, your Apple, your Netflix, your Google, your Meta now. So you have all of those. I think those ones almost stand apart from everything else because they have everyone attached at the hip at every move, it seems like. So you see the releases of new Apple phones that come out, and without fail, every single year, you see lines of people going to get the new iPhones. And for the most part, I have nothing against iPhones. They're not my preferred cell phone, to be honest.
Same.
But it's just one of those things of like, other phones, Androids, have had some of these features for years already. So I remember when the widgets came out on Apple and people were losing their mind about it. And I'm kind of thinking,
we've been doing this over here on Android for like years now, right?
Exactly. But people will do anything, and it's this little half-eaten piece of fruit, which is the simplest idea of a logo and the simplest concept of a company of like, hey, let's give people access to share everything across their network. So your iCloud and everything. So you're attached by your computer, your phone, your tablet, wherever you go, you can share things. Now you can track things with your iPod, with your iPods, or your iPhone, sorry, with AirTags and stuff. So it's one of those things of like, they've integrated themselves so well into everyone's day-to-day life that I have a hard time seeing these companies are just going to disappear like that. Like, how many times do people come home and, you've had a long day and you just want to watch something on Netflix for a half hour? You do that. Or, you have a break at work and you go and you scroll through Facebook and you see what people are doing. Now, I don't know if people still do Facebook. I was just using that as an example.
Yeah, probably not as much as 10 years ago, but it's still obviously a huge social media platform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to me, like, my favorite tech one is Microsoft, just because everything pretty much uses Excel or Word or the Office suite. Like, Microsoft Teams is very popular at work. So it's one of those things of like, they've been built so much into our lives that having to replace those, I couldn't imagine something that's going to come and disrupt it. Now, something very well could. I don't know what it is. I have no idea, but they're just so entwined into people's lives that it just makes sense. Like, these companies are constantly evolving and constantly going to get better and better and just keep capturing people's minds and their lives and everything. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but just like capturing as in the usage of what people do will be tied to these companies in some way.
Yeah. And so to a couple of your points there, I mentioned BlackBerry off the top of this segment, and you mentioned the iPhone and the new one coming out every year, and people lining up around the block at midnight to get that new iPhone. And I've thought this for quite a long time. And again, to what you just said, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but there's going to be something come along that displaces the iPhone the way the iPhone displaced the BlackBerry. That's my opinion. Right?
No,
something's going to happen I don't know what it is. I don't know when it's going to happen, but at some point, something's going to come along, a new shiny object, basically, and it's going to really displace that iPhone.
Absolutely. So I remember when I was in high school at the time, and everyone started getting Blackberries, and it was the thing to have
Yeah,
was everyone had Blackberries, and then slowly started to transition to everyone got iPhones, and it's like, okay, so
yeah,
you see how it changes, and like you said, BlackBerry went from the top. So I remember when I believe it was Jim Balsami,
yeah,
he
yeah,
was
yeah.
trying to buy the Pittsburgh Penguins and move them to Hamilton, and like he was the guy with BlackBerry, and he was gonna do this. He wasn't gonna be stopped.
Jim
And now you
Balsillie, that was it. That's how you
silly,
pronounce
that's
his last name. Yeah,
and
it
now
took me
you
a second to
hear
think of it as well.
yeah. Now you hear about it in retrospect and you go, oh, like BlackBerry was gonna do this? And it's like,
Yeah,
oh, okay, that's weird. So I remember actually kind of on the same topic, I was reading Annie Duke's book called Quit. Great book if anyone has not read it recently. So she talks about in the book all the sponsors that were at Tom Brady's first Super Bowl. And she's talking about like the state, it was like Qualcomm Stadium, and there's a whole bunch of like smaller companies that were very, very big 20 years ago.
right.
And most of these companies I have never heard from again. But when you
They're
go back
not.
and
They're
look at the
gone
time,
now.
they are gone now. And it's just kind of like, okay, not everything has lasting power if it's not evolving with the times. And you know
Yeah,
what? Maybe one of these days we're going to see an Amazon disappear. I don't know when. Maybe we'll see an Apple disappear. I have no idea when again, but
I don't think they're going to
eventually,
disappear, but I think they're going to like something's going to come along that really disrupts them and gives them competition.
yeah.
Because right now Amazon doesn't have a lot of competition. I guess maybe Shopify.
I,
Um, iPhone doesn't have a lot of competition. Obviously,
Amazon, sorry,
obviously, those of us that love our Androids, but still, iPhone is number one by far, right?
yeah. I will
And
say Androids or sorry, Apple, the iPhone is perfect for the user interface. Very easy. Anyone who looks at it can know exactly what they want to do. I like Android because I can customize it a little bit. I can change the way it looks. But anyone who wants something that's going to pick up and play, they can pick up an iPhone like that and do it and be like, okay,
yeah,
I'm up to speed. I know where everything is. Everything's connected. I don't have to worry about anything. So there is a little bit of that to it, which is nice and user friendly.
going back to BlackBerry, like if you watch any movie from sort of the time frame of about 2003 or 4 to about 2009, they don't talk about smartphones or Apple or cell phones. They refer to it as a BlackBerry.
Yep.
Like that. So it was that ingrained in popular culture for literally about 6 or 7 years, right?
Yep.
In the early 2000s, and then, yeah, iPhone came along and displaced it, and I'm just saying, I think at some point, something else is gonna come along that displaces the iPhone. I don't know
Yep.
what it is, I don't know when it'll be. I
And
just think there's gonna that's gonna happen, right? It
yes.
it seems it seems like it probably will happen.
So that's the cool thing. So kind of two quick parts on that. So again, like everyone had Blackberries in movies and stuff, and it was like it wasn't where's my phone, it's where's my Blackberry. It was the
Yeah.
brand that everyone said. And it was kind of like okay. And then recently I've started paying attention a little bit more in movies. And the ironic thing is villains never hold an iPhone in their hand when they're in movies. And I don't know if that's a very smart marketing ploy by Apple, but someone had pointed that out to me and I started paying attention to more and I was like, that is quite genius. So
Interesting.
to my second point where we were talking about the disruption, I remember in 2012 sitting in a McDonald's and thinking, wow, how cool would it be if I could punch in my order on my phone and when I got there I could pick it up and not have to talk to anyone. And it's one of those weird things of like it
I'm
has
pretty sure you
happened
can do
now.
that now, right?
You can do that now. And then I saw a couple weeks ago that they have a fully automated McDonald's in Texas. And it's like, oh, like the disruption of like a lot of people I knew grew
When
up,
you say
their
fully
first job,
automated, you mean like no employees, it's just robots making
no
your
em-
Big Mac and everything.
no employees in the store. And I was like, that seems extreme. And I think it's a pilot project, but it's one of those things of like, okay, like if
Yeah.
this actually takes off, whew, like
There's a lot
that's
of
a
kids
whole
out of jobs,
disruption.
a lot of high school kids that don't have jobs at
Yep,
McDonald's, and crypto investors that don't have jobs at
that
McDonald's
too.
anymore.
That too. Everyone who's holding with their diamond hands, like, good luck. But it's fascinating because like that's a disruption that it will disrupt a whole lot of people if it ever gets kind of up to speed. Now, I don't know the logistics of it. I just heard about it. I did a little bit of reading about it. I thought, wow,
Yeah.
this is kind of cool. But also, super terrifying. Well,
For
not super
sure,
terrifying,
right?
but terrifying.
The
But
robots are taking full disclosure, I do own some crypto, so and I don't work at McDonald's yet.
full disclosure, I do own some crypto as well. But for me, it was more of
That
a
is the
okay,
joke,
again,
obviously, though, right?
yeah, 1%. Let's go have fun with this and see what happens. And I can say is worth less than 0.5% now.
Right, right, right. I think one of the only other, well, no, a couple sectors we haven't touched on yet is healthcare, and obviously in Canada, is very different than investing in healthcare in the US. I've obviously had so many American guests here on the Passive Income podcast that have many different ways to invest in healthcare. And I guess just as a Canadian, what are some of your sort of thoughts or strategies for investing in healthcare?
Uh, whew, my thoughts on investing in healthcare is mostly through index again. I know I'm super boring on some of these American consumer
Hey, you know
accounts.
what? Investing, if your investing is boring, you're probably doing it right.
That's kind of the way I look at it. It's like, hey, like I don't have anything flashy. Like I don't own any GameStop or I didn't do anything like that. Like I'm pretty basic. However, the one thing I will say that the Americans have that's nice, and I understand they do it because our healthcare system is very differently, but
Yeah.
I keep hearing about the the health savings account that they have down there, the HSA. That's it. And I keep hearing about that, how it's triple tax advantage and all this stuff. And I've been doing some reading on this, and I'm thinking like, oh my god, like this thing can be an absolute gold mine if you do it properly. But again, it's you have to do it down there because they don't have the same type of healthcare as we do. So I just want to give a
Yeah.
shout out to any of your American um, interviewees who have come on or anyone you talk to that has an HSA account and they're using it to the triple tax advantage, you guys are absolutely killing it down there because
For
that is
sure.
a very cool account. That and I really wish we had a 1031 exchange up here in Canada because oh my god, like the rules for real estate down there is almost like the wild wild west sometimes. If you
Yeah,
hear
yeah.
the stories of the people with the 1031 exchanges and they go from 10 house or well, they go from one house to 10 houses in 5 years because they've just done this exchange of like, oh, my single to a duplex to a triplex to a quadplex, and then they just go from there. It's like, oh, okay, like that would be cool to have here.
Did
But yeah,
you did you see the episode with I Tom at the Frugal Gay? How he wanted
yeah,
to make he started out by being in high school wanting to get half price at the Gap on his clothing,
that
and then, 4 or 5, 6 years later, he's got $9,000, puts that $9,000 down on a property, and however many years later, he's now has, like, 21 or 22 doors, like, yeah,
yeah.
amazing. That's
So
a great story. Anyone
he
should go check that one out in the library of the Passive Income Podcast for sure.
he is a great person to listen to talk. And there's a couple
Yeah.
different ones, like the Phi couple, like their story is very replicable because I delivered for skipping the dishes for a while when I was going to look to buy my first rental, and I binged Bigger Pockets podcast just because it was real estate and it was everything. You get to hear again, same type of story. You get to hear a little bit of everyone's different strategies and all their different tips and tricks. But you also hear a whole bunch of the stuff from the States. It's like, oh, this person went from 1 to 100 units in 8 years. And it's like, okay,
And you're
like
like,
how do they do
"How
it?
do you do that?"
Exactly. And it's one of those things of okay, the more creative you can get with your mind and you can solve problems for people, the quicker you can kind of level up in real estate. And that's kind of a cool, neat thing. Now, it's not one of my main focuses, but is something I dabble into a little bit. But yeah, it's very, very cool, I will say, some of
Cool.
the stuff they have there. But I know
I
that
know
didn't
you've
quite answer.
also
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
that's
go ahead.
fine. We'll move on. Um, I also know you've watched enough episodes of the Passive Income Podcast to know that right outside that window on the other side of the road, there is a, Canadian National triple track, and the train goes
Yes.
by every 10 to 20 minutes. And so and then actually just further down the road, not that this road runs east-west, but then just down that way, there's a road that runs north-south, and there's a CP rail as well. So, I'm very
Pro
familiar with the
railroad.
trains. I get stopped at trains quite often in my day-to-day routine, and yeah, what are your obviously, Canadian National, Canadian Pacific, we're very dependent on them for moving goods back and forth across the country.
Yeah.
And I don't are you invested in either of them or
I have a very small position in both of them. And for the exact same reasons that you kind of listed. Like you see their trains all the time. They're always 100 cars long, it seems, and they're
200?
transporting everything. And it's just one of those things of like, you'll sit there, and we used to play a game as a kid, and you'd sit there and you start counting the cards as it goes by, and then you get to triple digits and you go, oh, I don't think I
Yeah.
want to keep counting anymore. So like, you see some of your infrastructure and all where their trains run. So they run from here basically all the way down to Texas and across the East Coast and everything. It's like, okay, these guys have built a business that is very hard to destroy. And I don't mean destroy as in a bad way, but just like disrupt, I guess is a better word of like, this
Yeah.
is a perfect
Very
model.
wide moat, right? You can't.
Yes.
Nobody's going to come outside my window and build another train track right beside the three that
Exactly.
are already there.
And I mean, if you do try to go build a new train track, that's going to cost you a lot of capital to get that started. It's kind of the same thing with the telecoms.
Right.
Like, if you want to start building new towers here, it's going to cost you a lot to get that going. So, yes, I do own a small position in the railways just because I've always liked trains as a kid too. So that kind of plays
Yeah,
into it a little bit. But
for
no, they
sure.
are great businesses with great moats, like you said.
We all had those train sets as a kid, and so definitely fun to play with.
Yes.
The trains and whatnot, and yeah, definitely. You know, I can't. I personally I don't own either of them yet, but every day I watch them go by, saying, "Why don't I own that company yet?" Right? Like,
I think I saw a tweet that you had. It might have been a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, though, something along the lines of, "Oh, if I bought a share of the railways every time a train went by, I'd be retired by now." And I remember seeing that and thinking, "Oh yeah, that would be a good thing," because the train station's not too far from my house, and I can hear them blow the horn too. It's just like,
yeah.
"Oh yeah, like that would be a good thing. Yeah, kind of cool to do."
Of course, I'd go broke if, like I said, 10, 20 times a day. I can't afford to buy a share every single time they go by.
Yeah, not yet, not yet. Soon you
Not
could though.
yet. Yeah, and I've also said in tweets and in other podcasts, this isn't Pokemon. You can't catch them all.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
unfortunately you can't.
there's so many great companies that I'd love. I was looked up a couple more today. I'm like, oh, I would invest in this company, but at this point, I'm really just trying to increase my positions in like Bell, Bank of Nova Scotia, Hydro One, some of my REIT positions,
Yep.
and so it's like I don't really need to keep looking for more companies,
Mhm.
although we all keep looking at more companies, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's an endless amount of companies out there that you can look at. You can go and dig through financials and you go, "Oh my god, I think this would be a great opportunity." But I think
Yeah,
it comes back to a little bit of, okay, after a while you have to pick and choose. Like, you can't, like you said, you can't own them all. And
yeah,
that's why, to me, my core holdings are index funds. I do have a lot of, well, I don't have a lot. I have a good number of individuals. I think about 15 individuals, but my core holdings are in my indexes, and those I
yeah.
know
You
are
have exposure
my
to so
foundation.
many companies within those
Exactly.
ETFs, right, and
Yeah.
index funds.
And then from there, I'll pick and choose the ones that I really, really like. So, like I said, I do own a lot of the banks here in Canada. I own the telecoms, some of the railways, most of the utilities. So it's one of those things of like, okay, I've almost built myself a little ETF of all these different markets inside of it as individuals, that at some point I'm going to start to lower my exposure to my index, or completely switch it to the different index. Maybe just put that all into VFV, the S&P 500, and just go, okay, I'm gonna take care of myself with with my dividend investor, my dividend growing companies, and I'm gonna let
Yeah,
everything else just kind of ride on the S&P or ride
nice,
on the Nasdaq or something like that. And I think
right.
that's where I might go in the future. But right now, I'm very content having my index holding, because, like you said, you get so excited to see all these companies and you want to buy them all, but
Yeah,
you can't. You don't.
yeah,
I don't have enough time or enough money to be able to go and do all those.
yeah.
I would love to be able to do that, but I don't have enough time or money.
So yeah, so the one I looked up today and added to my watch list was actually another REIT, CAR, Canadian Apartment Rentals, which is, I mean, if you look at it, it looks really great on the surface. I haven't dug too deep into it so far yet, but I'm probably not going to invest in it simply because, like I said, I've got so many other positions that I just want to keep increasing. And like you said, I don't have the money to like buy everything,
Hmm.
right? Which is
My
unfortunate. It would be nice if I could
Yeah,
just on a daily basis say, "Oh, I'll buy 1,000 shares of this and 10,000 shares of that and 5,000 shares of this one," but that's not the way it works in
I,
reality, right?
It's not. I mean, you could probably buy 5,000 shares or something. It might be a penny stock though, but I mean, I
Yeah, right.
probably wouldn't recommend that because I have done the penny stock before. And you ask everyone's done a penny stock at some point. And like I lost pretty much everything on the penny stock, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
like I know what I'm doing. You don't know what you're doing. Like it takes time and
Oh, I'm
experience
still
to know
holding
all
the
these
bag on
things.
some penny stocks because maybe someday they'll go back up to $1 and I can get
At
my
one day they're
investment back.
one day they're gonna go. So my question to you, David. Okay, so you had mentioned that you had CRT on your watch list. What else do you have on your watch list? Is there anything that you're particularly keeping your eye on, or you just kind of you had mentioned that you're looking to kind of increase some of your positions? Is there anything in particular that you're looking at?
I well, yeah, I keep my eye on a lot of things, obviously, and the easy answer to this question would have been a month ago. The top of my watch list was Hydro One, and in this past month, I have started a position in Hydro One. I don't have very many shares yet, just dollar cost averaging in, and so that was where I was a month ago, or even less, maybe 3 weeks ago. Hydro One was definitely at the top of my watch list, and yeah, so it's really right now. I'm just trying to dollar cost average into Hydro One, Bell Canada, and Bank of Nova Scotia.
Okay.
And the only reason I picked those three is like we discussed in Ontario, we pay Hydro One whether
Yep.
you like it or not. Bell Canada is who I pay my phone bill to. Bank of Nova Scotia is who my mortgage is with. So it's again all about turning the cash register around.
Yeah.
And then yeah, there's probably other companies where I would like to increase my positions, like RioCan and a few others, and probably a few others on that I already hold that I'm like, let's just keep turning that cash register around, get them to pay me to pay them, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah, and I think that's the easiest way to do it. And just a kind of like a quick little story here. Like I remember teaching someone about dividend investing 10, 15 years ago, and it was one of those things of like, oh, okay, like you can start with something small. So I remember explaining to two of my buddies. One of them showed up to my to his parents' house a half hour early, and we were there and we were chatting. It was kind of explaining like, okay, like what's a dividend? Like how does a drip work? Like how does this
yep,
like what is goes into a stock price? Like how do you read financials? And one of my other buddies showed up about 45 minutes late, came in, he was all grumpy, and he's like, all right, how do I turn 10,000 to 20,000 next week? And I was like, look, dude, like I have no idea how to do that. Like if you want to do that, go to the casino, go gamble it. But like this
yeah.
when you do dividend investing and any investing in general, you're looking at it with such a long time horizon that if you need the money now or you need to double it now, doing some type of gambling on the stock market's not the place for it. So you need to have a good basis and a good solid foundation. You need to have a little bit of knowledge on what you're doing and why you're doing it. Kind of find out why you're trying to invest because you do see a lot of people that just try to throw money at stuff and just go, "Look, I need this to double next week." And no one knows what's going to happen in the market. Like, did you think anyone really saw what was going to happen in March of 2020 or what was happening in 2008 in the real estate market? I mean, maybe a little bit on that one. In hindsight, obviously,
Yeah.
but it's like no one can predict that stuff. These things happen. So have a plan, walk yourself through it, build yourself a thesis. If you buy particular companies, like make sure you write down why you buy them. And if things change as you go,
Oh, I love that. Write down why you bought a company.
yeah, I have a list of why I've bought in every single company. And I kind of, if I ever consider selling, I go and I take a look at my list and I go, okay, has the reasoning why I bought this company changed? If the answer is yes, then I'll consider selling. But if the answer is just because, oh, it had a bad quarter or it had a bad month and it's gone down a little bit, I'm remembering that, okay, I bought this for the long term. Has that
Right.
changed for me? No. Well, then I'm just going to keep leaving it and I'll let it go. Like, you don't have to sit there and play with everything. Like sometimes your best thing you can do is just sit on your hands, or better yet, don't even look at your portfolio. Go in, make a couple of your acquisitions, and then just let it go and just walk away. Forget the password. I think people say that the people who have the best returns are the people who have been in the grays for 20 years, and it's true because they're not going and touching their portfolio all the time. Like you
Right.
hear the stories of people that are like, oh, you know what, I did, I only made 1% last week. I got to double that this week. And it's like, okay, like weeks go up, weeks go down. Like,
Yeah.
do we have any idea what's going to happen in 2023? Interest rates are fairly high now. Unemployment is still at the same rate. And I mean, we've spent the last, what, 3 years pumping out trillions of dollars in stimulus. Like, obviously, something's going to happen at some point. Obviously, raising inflation is why, or raising interest rates to inflation is why. But it's one of those things of like, we have no idea what's going to happen. So it's one of those things of, if you have a sound process and a thesis and everything on why you're doing it, it makes it a lot easier to sleep at night because you're buying solid companies, or you're buying an index that has solid companies in it. I'm not throwing my money at a penny stock looking to double it like that.
Yeah,
And that's just kind of the one
almost
thing that was
impossible
instilled to
to
me.
do, right?
Yeah. That's what was
I
instilled to me.
am
Of like,
interested. Do you still speak to either or both of those two friends from 10, 15 years ago? And the one that arrived early and listened to you, I'm guessing, is doing a lot better than the person that thought they could double their money in a week.
Yes, I talk. So the guy who sat there and listened, me and him talk finances on a fairly regular basis. It's more. It's not exactly always like companies' exact details. It's more of thought processes and stuff. And like,
Yep.
okay, what do we think about this? The other guy, we don't talk a whole lot. He doesn't want to talk about anything like that. So it's like, okay, like I'm not gonna force you to have a conversation you don't want to have, but
Yep.
I tried to teach you and you didn't want to listen. And I mean, not everyone wants to listen to that. Like when you're a kid, you think that you know everything. So I remember, this will be my last story I tell. So as a kid, my dad gave me the option of like, oh, like if you read these 2 books, you don't have to go to school anymore. And I'm thinking like, get out of here. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
this
not doing
sounds great. I
yeah,
don't
first
want us to go to school anymore. Yeah.
well, I was the opposite. I was like, I'm not reading these books. Like, why would I want to read a book? Now I read about 40 books a year, and it's great. I love it. But it was at the time. So the books he had given me was The Wealthy Barber by David
Yep.
Chilton and
Oh
Rich Dad Poor
wow,
Dad
that's the
by
first
Robert Kiyosaki.
book I ever read. Well, not the first book I ever. The first financial book I ever read as well.
It is one of my top 5 books of all time, and I reread that one every July or every January because it's just one of my favorites. I met David
Pay
Chilton once
yourself
before.
first. That's probably the number one thing in The
Exactly.
Wealthy Barber. Pay yourself first.
Exactly. So it's one of those things of like, as an 18-year-old, I thought like, God, like I don't want to listen to this, and it took me 2 years to actually get around to reading the books. And as soon as I read the books, it's like a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, oh, I understand why I should have done this. And
Yeah.
now everything kind of makes a little bit more sense as to why I'm investing and everything. It's just sometimes your parents can give you good information, and I know as a kid you don't want to listen to that, but odds are your parents are giving you good information because of either A, they've done it and they're trying to replicate it in you, or B, they've made mistakes and don't want you to do the same mistake over.
Right.
So, also, reading is a great pastime. Make sure you do it.
Cool, man. This has been a great episode of the Passive Income Podcast. Great discussion. I wanted to bring this up 10 minutes ago. I see we're already over an hour, but I know you're in Ottawa. You can probably see that my team is the Canucks. We've gone through some major difficulties this season,
Yes.
and the Senators are seem to be building. What are your thoughts on Ottawa, on the Senators, on Vancouver, the Canucks, or in anything else in hockey?
I I don't follow hockey as much as I used to when I was a kid. I do follow it fairly well now.
Yeah.
Ottawa seems to have a good team now. I think we're maybe a defenseman two away. Maybe if one of the goalies get a hot stretch, I think we can do good. Vancouver also a little bit of the same boat. They've had a little bit of underwhelming people this year, and then you've had some just very weird things happen with Bruce Boudreau and Bo Horvat, and it's just kind of these weird things that you look at the team and you go, this team should be good on paper, and then
Yeah,
the
there's a
results
lot of
just
good
aren't
players
there.
on paper, but they don't play the game on paper, they play it on ice.
Exactly. So I think both the teams will be in a good position going forward. However, I think there's a little bit of a tank for Bedard race right now with everyone of like, first off, the kid is ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
if you, I don't want to say if you're not trying to tank, you're not doing it properly, but if you're not trying to tank for this kid, you're not doing it properly. Like, this kid is going to be a stud. So
Yeah.
my last thing I will say on this is, because I grew up in Ottawa, it has been entrenched in me that I will cheer for any other team except the Toronto Maple Leafs. Because
Yeah.
there is, without a fail, if you go to any Ottawa Senators game, and I mean any game, regardless who's playing, there's always that one a-hole in a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey at every event. And it's like, oh, like, why? Why are you coming to this? Just to be that guy. So I will never cheer for the Leafs. But I think Vancouver's on a good path, and I think Ottawa is, we're getting there. We're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
quite there, but we have a good idea of what we want to do, I guess.
Okay, on that note, nice little side note to end the Passive Income Podcast, a little quick chat about our hockey teams. But again, thank you, Steve. You can find him on Twitter at Millennial Mojo. Make sure to give him a follow. Anything you would like to say in closing before we sign off?
Nope, just make sure you have fun. Just do some research. Again, I'm not telling anyone what to do with their money. You make your own decisions. Everyone's grown up, so you can do your own thing. But I'm just kind of giving my own experience, and that's it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Basically, not financial advice. We're just a couple of guys having a conversation. And if any of our information helps point you in the right direction to do more research for yourself, then we've done our job. And we really appreciate you listening and watching and following along. And with that said, we're well over an hour. So if you are still listening and watching, you have to hit the subscribe button. Those are the rules. Just hit the subscribe button. We are when we started recording tonight, I was literally 4 away from 1,000. So by the time people are watching this, we should have 1,000 subscribers on YouTube.
All right,
And so
let's
yeah,
go.
let's go.
Let's go. We need those 4. We need to get Dave those 4. And again, Dave, thank you for bringing on so many wonderful guests and letting us hear so many great stories from different
Yeah,
people and hearing
it's
everyone's
been great.
perspective.
It's been such a fun ride interviewing, and I don't even call them interview. I call them conversations with so many people. We're closing in on 40 guests in 4 months, and by the end of February, it's going to be 50 in 5 months. So absolutely
You
incredible. I really appreciate the support of everyone in the Dividend Twitter community. Watching the videos, subscribing to the channel. Being guests like yourself, so many guests, and yeah, just I appreciate everyone.
you're doing an awesome job, Dave. Thank you very much for letting me come on and chat with you for a little bit.
Perfect. Thank you, and subscribe.